feet underwater.
Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Bacon. Welcome to the show, y'all. And listen to me. Chris has been given permission to make a couple of drop-offs a week, right? And what that means is basically that they're going to give him a pack and he's going to take it to a certain address and he's just going to drop it off. Then he's going to leave. That's it. You know? Now, on the second drop-off during that week, they'll give him some money to take back. But other than that, that's all he has to do. And once he does that, they'll break him off a little bit. You feel what I'm saying? Now, they do all the other young members the same way in the neighborhood right now. They ease them into the business. They're not just going to dump a pack on them like what you see on TV, go out there and get it and all this and that. No, they're training them up. They're training them that first and foremost to be loyal to the business, to be loyal to the process and how things work, right? And then after that, they're going to introduce him and the rest of the brothers as they get a little older to doing more. Because more than anything, when you're part of an organization, you have to make sure that the members understand that the organization becomes before them. It has to be that way. All the members have to be subordinate to the organization and the people that are in charge of that organization. And if you move people along too fast, with anything, they become full of themselves and they start to think that they are somehow responsible for the success that they're having and not the organization, which it is true that the individual is responsible for the success that they're having, but an organization cannot have you believing that you are above it. You have to be subordinate to it. And that is the process. That's the process of the manipulation. And it's very, very calculated. It's very, very well thought out. And a lot of people just don't seem to understand that because they always ask these questions. How could you get so caught up in something like that? How could you lose yourself to something like that? Why you let them tell you what to do and when to do it and how to do it? Why would you just leave your family? Why would you just get up in the middle of the night and if that phone rings and you leave? Because you've been conditioned to do that. That's why. And when you get them young like that, you get them conditioned to going. You get them conditioned to going. And that's what they were doing with Chris and all the other young gangsters. And that was going to cause a problem because the more they indoctrinate him to the way that they do things, the more he's going to struggle with maintaining his loyalty to Sean and the VLs. See, but again, he's a child. So this process is taking place, and it's going to cause him to question some things. It's going to cause him to question some things about himself, about the organization, everything. So here's what happens. One day, one of the BMs dropped in. And the BM that dropped in, he was just coming over to the block to see what was going on. No big deal, nothing like that. He does it all the time. He likes to be hands-on with the young ones. He likes to be hands-on with the young. So he comes up on the block and he recognizes Chris. And he walks up to him. Now he's got an entourage. He walks up to him. He said, what's your name, man? And he told him, Chris, it's my name. And then he looked at him. He just kept staring at him. And he said, is your daddy named such and such? And Chris looks at him. He's like, I don't know my daddy's name. He left when I was a baby. I never got to know him. Now, this BM that's looking at him, see, he was a friend of Chris's dad. And he saw Chris's dad in Chris. He saw it. He tells him, he said, I know your dad. So Chris looks at him wide-eyed because his mom doesn't talk about him. Nobody talks about him. So this is the first time anybody has ever said anything like this to him. He said, I know your daddy. So Now Chris is locked in. And he really doesn't know what to say. He's speechless. So the BM, he's looking at him. He tells him, he said, come with me. And he puts his hands on his shoulders and he walks him. And they walk away. He said, listen, why are you out here? And he told him, I just want to be part of gangsters. And the BM asked him why. Now Chris is fumbling, but he's not fumbling because he's a 13-year-old boy about to be 14. He's fumbling because he don't want to slip up and let anything out the bag to the fact that he's a vice lord. You feel me? But the BM is taking it that he's just a young man and he's nervous, which is to Chris's benefit. So he said, look, you want to be a gangster? I'm going to take you under my wing and I'm going to show you what it really means to be a gangster. From this day forward, you under me. And then the BM turns around and they walk back to the crowd of the people on the block and he tells everybody up on the block, he's under me. Treat him with the respect that's due. So they all looking at him, that's what's up, folks, that's what's up, folks. But see, some of them, because they were young, they looked at him and now the jealousy and envy is starting to show on their faces because it's like, who is he? And why is big folks doing this for him and not me? You got to remember, these are all kids. They're competing for the attention of these adults, right? So now, instead of Chris becoming somebody that they want to hold up in esteem, he becomes a target. Now, the BM understands that this is not his first rodeo dealing with kids. So he tells them, he's like a son to me. I know his daddy. So that helped a lot of the younger ones to say, okay, I get it. That's the connection. So when the BM leaves, Chris is in shock. He doesn't really know what just happened. He doesn't know what happened. So everybody's asking him, who's your daddy? Who's your daddy? And Chris is telling him, I don't know my daddy. I don't know him. I never met him. I never met him. But that wasn't true. Chris was a baby. He just doesn't remember it. Because his daddy used to hold him and rock him to sleep. Let him sleep on his chest at night. But he doesn't know or remember any of that. So when he gets home, he asks his mama, and said, I met somebody today that said they know my daddy. Her eyes get wide open like a smoke, and she said, who? Who said that to you? And he tells her that I was up on the block and this guy came up there and he didn't, he tells his mama what the guy's name was, but he don't tell his mama that this guy's a BM. He don't tell his mama that this guy's a gangster, but his mama knows. And she said, Chris, what have you done? What have you done? And he looks at her, he said, what are you talking about, Mom? And he tells her, she tells him that I know that guy. And he asks her, he said, how do you know him? And she tells him bluntly and sternly, it's a friend of your father. So he looks at her and just as sternly, he says, why didn't you tell me about my father? Where is he at? And she looks at him and the sadness washes all over. She said, he left us. He abandoned us. That's why I didn't tell you anything about him. He's nothing to me. And she looks at him and she tells him that she loves him and the tear rolls down her face and he runs towards him, he hugs him. He said, Mama, where is he at? And she said, I don't know where he's at. He left. Why did he leave? Why did he leave us? So she tells him, sit down. So he sits down at the kitchen table and she tells him that he got into some trouble. And he owed the gangsters some money for some things that he had been doing with them. So Chris asked him, was he a gangster? And she said, no, he wasn't. He wasn't. And that's when she looks at him and she catches Chris off guard because, again, like I say, he's 13, getting ready to turn 14. She said, "Are you?" And he slips up and said, "Yes." And she puts her head down and she said, "Why, Chris? Why? Why did you do that?" Now, his mind is bouncing all over the place. He can't tell her what Sean's got him doing. You understand that he really vice lord. You see what I'm saying? So he's caught up and confused. He don't know what to say. He don't know what to say. So he says nothing. So his mama looks at him and she says, "Look, I know you think that you're making some right decisions, but I'm telling you that you're not. Everything that you're doing right now, whatever they got you doing, I'm telling you, it's going to lead to trouble. Nothing good is going to come out of it. And they might tell you that something's good is going to come out of it." So that's when Chris tells her, he said, the dude that he met today is taking him under his wings. And she just stares at him. It's almost like she didn't recognize him anymore. And she was like, "What happened to you? When did this happen to you?" And he holds firm and he says absolutely nothing about what happened to him the summer that he spent on the north side of the city. He doesn't share any of that with her. But she knows her child. She knows that he's keeping something from her. She knows it. So in an effort to find out what it is that he's hiding from her, she does what any mother would do. She puts her detective hat on and she starts to think, okay, he wasn't like this before the summer. Then after the summer, he is. What changed? What changed was he went to the north side of the city. She took him there so that she could go to school, and he came back different. So she calls her friend, right, Miss Kathy, and she's explaining to Miss Kathy what has happened because Miss Kathy knows the whole situation. She knows the whole situation. And Miss Kathy is like, "What are you going to do?" And while she's talking to Lisa, Sean walks in. And he hears his mother going back and forth. And he said, "Who you talking to, Mom?" And she tells him that she's talking to Lisa and that Chris is acting out and he's a gangster now and all of these different things. So Sean fakes this concern and said, "Let me talk to her. I can talk to him for her." So he gets on the phone and he's talking to Lisa about Sean and all the different things. And he makes her believe that he wasn't interested in any of that kind of stuff when he was down there with him. So he asks her, he says, "So what is he doing and who is he met? What's going on?" And she tells him everything that Chris told her. Everything. Meeting the BM, all of this and that. And Sean is excited about that. But he fakes like he's concerned with what's going on. But he's like, "Dang, this is moving along faster than I thought." That's what he thought in the back of his mind. Now, Lisa's pouring out her heart to him. And she said, "Please, can you talk to him for me? Will you talk to him?" And he said, "Yeah, I got you. I got you. Just let him know I'll call tonight. I got some things I need to do. I'll call him back tonight." But see, Lisa didn't know they talked every night anyway. They talked every night. So this time, when they talk, Sean is telling him that he's proud of him and everything is working out just fine. But Chris has got a lot of questions. And the only adult that he's been able to talk to is Sean. So he's starting to ask Sean these adult questions, these fatherly son type questions that Sean is not interested in answering He has no way of understanding the mind of a soon-to-be 14-year-old child because he don't care about it. And Chris starts to notice that Sean is not helping him. He wants to know who his daddy is. He wants to know what happened. Sean can't answer those questions for him. It ain't but one person that can answer those questions for him. Well, it's two, but one's not talking, and that's his mother. And the other one is the BM that he just met. So now, after talking to Sean, he gets off the phone. He notices that Sean is only concerned about continuing the business, making sure he stays on course. But now, he's got concerns. And he's by no means letting this go. And he's committed to getting answers to his questions. So he's out on the block every day. And if the BM don't come up there, he's sending somebody up there to check on him. And he's relaying messages. He's telling me, he said, I need to talk to him. I want to know about my father. I want to know what's going on. And they're giving him bits and pieces. They're giving him bits and pieces about what his father did, how he ran out with some money, didn't take care of the business. But they didn't hurt him. They didn't kill him. They don't know where he's at. And this is just making Chris more distraught because he feels this connection to this person that he doesn't know. He feels this connection to him and he wants to know why. He wants to hear out of his mouth why he left him. So after a few months, the BM drops back in on the block and he tells me, he said, man, help me find my pops. And the BM looks at him and is like, I don't know where to start. I haven't heard from him since the day he left. So he asked the BM, tell me what happened the day he left. So the BM tells me, he said, look, he owed this money. I went and talked to the heads at the time and tried to explain to them, give him some time, he's good for it. And what had happened was that his father ran into some hard times. Got behind on some bills, not gambling, not drugs, not anything like that. Just got behind on some bills. And instead of paying the money back to the oil for what he was doing, he paid bills. He paid the bills. And he just needed some time. And they were not going to give it to him. That's how ruthless the game is. I don't care nothing about what you got going on. Give me me. Give me me. And that's dead on that. You can think whatever you want to think about that, but give me me or off with your head. That's how the game go. You step on my toes, I break yours. Simple as that. So Chris is looking at the BM and he's like, but why didn't you help him? And he tells him, I tried. But your pops ran. And he never came back. But I made sure that nothing happened to you or your moms. He said, I did that because they wanted that money. But they let it slide because they knew that Lisa had nothing to do with that. And then after they found out that he had paid bills with it so that you would be put out on the streets, they were willing to give him a chance, but he never came back. He said, what you got to understand, little Chris, is that we all know your pops. He wasn't part of the business, but he was a good dude. And he ran, though. He got scared. Now Chris is looking at him and he's just torn apart because he's like, he don't know what to think. But what he does know is that he got to find his pops. There's only certain things that his pops can answer for him. Like any child that's been abandoned, they want to know why. They want to know if it was because of them. They want to know all of these things. Yeah, he's been told what it was about, but he needs to hear out of his pop's mouth what it was really about. and he's struggling. And the BM sees him. He tells him, he said, look, you're getting older now. And you're going to have to learn to live with disappointment. He said, this lifestyle out here, and he looks back and he waves his hand and he shows Chris, making him look at the block and all the people out on the block. He said, this lifestyle out here that we've chosen, that you've chosen, he said, it's full of disappointments. And he said, you're going to have people that are going to lie, manipulate, and use you all along the way. And you're going to have to be able to recognize when they're doing that. So when he said that to Chris, Chris looks at him and Chris thinks, does he know? Does he know that I'm being used by Sean? And the BM had no idea. But he was just giving him the same kind of speech that he's given his sons over the years. Because he wants Chris to be prepared for this life that he's chosen. And he tells Chris, he said, look, I got to go. But if you need me, you holler at one of them and they'll get at me. And he asked him, he said, what you doing next month? And Chris tells him, I ain't got nothing going on, the same thing I do every day. He said, man, ask your moms, can I take you down the way with me? I want to introduce you to some people. So he said, yeah, I'll ask her. So the BM leaves. Chris stays up on the block, and later on when he goes home that night, he tells his mom about the conversation, and he asks his mom, can he go, you know what I'm saying, pay a visit to some guys with the BM. And like I said, Lisa knows him. And Lisa trusts him. And she says, yeah, it's okay. But be careful about these people, Chris. Be careful about these people. So that night he goes to sleep and he's thinking, who am I going to meet? Who am I going to meet? And day after day, he's getting up and he's doing the same thing. He's getting out on the block. He's looking around. He's seeing what's going on. They've given him more responsibilities. His birthday's come up. He's 14 years old. He's getting older, but he's in his mind, he's wiser than, you know what I'm saying, his years. He's still talking to Sean on the phone, telling Sean what's going on, but he's feeling conflicted about that now because he's starting to develop a bond with the BM. And the bond that he's developing with the BM is based on the familiarity, the knowing that the BM has of his father. Sean can't feel that guy. He can't feel that guy. So he's starting to be torn. He's starting to be torn between his loyalty to Sean and the organization, Vice Lord organization, and his curiosity of the BM and his longing to want to know his pops. He's feeling torn about that. And he doesn't know what to do. Again, he's a child. Yeah, he's 14 and he's been in the streets for a little while, but he's still a child. And he's confused. His mind has been corrupted and polluted by Sean, and everything after that is just a pile on. Trauma after trauma after trauma. You understand? So now, Chris goes on this trip. And the BM takes him to meet a lot of the guys that were from the neighborhood that knew his father, that had moved away, that were part of the business. And when I say the business, I mean the organization. But they have all moved away. They're not part of the neighborhood anymore. And he took him to meet him because he thought that maybe if he met these guys, that they could fill in some holes that and answer some questions that Chris might have about his pops, because they all knew him and they all liked him. But the BM was his friend, his best friend, but the rest of them, they were cool with him as well. So he was up there and they all were telling me, said, man, if he wouldn't have ran, we would have worked it out. True or not is irrelevant at this point, because hindsight is 20/20, because they wanted to hurt him at the time, but then when they found out what he did, they wanted him to stay, but he was already gone. In all of these years, nobody has ever had any way to contact him. Nobody knows where he's at. But they were sharing all of these stories about how his pops was this and how his pops was that and how he would never join the organization. He was a stand-up dude and all of these types of things. And how much he loved Chris and how much he used to hold Chris in his arms at night and stand on the porch and read to him and talk to him. They used to tell him all of these things. All of the things that his pops did. And Chris found himself more and more drawn to the gangsters. His loyalties were being put in jeopardy to the vice lords. These men knew his father. Sean didn't. These men spoke honestly and in some situations fondly of his father. Sean couldn't. He had no clue who his father was. And the bond that he was developing with these men was getting stronger by the day. Getting stronger by the day. And now he had a choice to make. Do I continue to do what I'm doing by telling Sean what's going on and the people that I'm meeting and all of this and that, knowing that this information is going to be used to hurt these people, these men, this organization that he's starting to gravitate towards? He's trying to figure it out, y'all. He's trying to figure it out. And it's getting harder by the day. It's getting harder by the day. But you're going to have to stick around and check out the next episode to figure out what happens. Because it's getting better and better. You feel me? This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker. I say peace, y'all.
I've been trying to breathe on the water.